My name is Matthias Hayes. I am 70 years old, and for 45 years I was a federal investigator. My job was to find the rot beneath the shine. I just never expected to find it in my own family. I was late for Christmas dinner at my daughter's house. When I quietly opened the door, I found the party in full swing. My son-in-law Trevor was in the middle of the room, raising a champagne flute. "And a final toast," he shouted over the music. "To a future with no more complications." Someone yelled, "Where's your father-in-law, Trevor?" Trevor laughed, a loud braying sound. "Oh, the old man. He's late. Thank God. I hope he's gone for good." The room erupted in laughter, and I watched my own daughter Emily giggle into her hand and say, "Trevor, be nice." I stood in the doorway, the cold December air at my back. I didn't feel pain. I felt clarity. I carefully, silently closed the door until the latch clicked. I turned around and walked away. An hour later, their celebration turned into a nightmare. They just didn't know it yet. The drive to Emily's new neighborhood always puts a knot in my stomach. My 2015 Toyota Camry, reliable and paid for, feels like a horse and buggy rolling through their pristine streets. Every house is a monument to debt, 3-car garages, and lawns so green they look fake. I am a man who values substance. They live in a world of surfaces. I am a simple man. I have lived in the same 2-bedroom apartment in the city for 30 years. It's clean, organized, and the mortgage was paid off in 1999. To Trevor, it's a dump. I know this because he told me. "Matthias," he'd said the first time he visited, sniffing the air, as if my small kitchen was offensive. "When are you going to move out of this box?" It's kind of depressing, isn't it? He never calls me Dad. He calls me Matthias, or worse, Chief. It's a little jab at my 40-year government career. He thinks I was some pencil-pushing accountant for the federal government. I never corrected him. It was easier to let him think I was boring. It was safer. "Still driving this thing, Chief?" he'd ask every time he saw my Camry. "You know they make cars this century, right?" And Emily, my daughter, she would just sigh a weak little sound. "Trevor, be nice." Her "be nice" never had any force. It was just a placeholder for a spine she no longer used. Emily used to be bright. We used to argue about politics, about books, about the designated hitter rule. Real conversations. Now she just parrots his opinions. She's become fragile, hushed, a watercolor painting left out in the rain. Christmas used to be my holiday, mine and Clara's. My late wife Clara loved Christmas. We'd have a simple tree. I'd make my famous standing rib roast. We'd play Bing Crosby. It was quiet. It was ours. Since Clara passed, and especially since Emily married Trevor, Christmas has become his production. Loud, flashy, and hollow. I go because I promised Clara I would. "She needs you, Matthias," she'd told me in the hospital, her hand frail in mine. "Don't let her drift away." So I go. I endure the casual insults. I endure the smug superiority of a man who has never built anything, only borrowed against it. I endure Trevor. But tonight felt different. The knot in my stomach was tighter. The air was already sour before I even left my apartment. The real reason for the tension, the reason I was driving through this miserable sleet, was the phone call. It came last Tuesday. I was organizing my tax documents for the year. An old habit when the phone rang. Emily. Her voice was too sweet, a high-pitched, sugary tone she only uses when she wants something. "Hi, Daddy." She hadn't called me Daddy since she was in college. My guard went up immediately. "What is it, Emily?" "Well, Trevor has this amazing opportunity. A new tech startup. It's a sure thing, Dad, absolutely guaranteed. We just need a little help with the business loan." I stayed silent. I knew what was coming next. "How little is a little, Emily?" $150,000. I almost dropped the phone. Emily, I'm a retired government employee. I live on a pension and my 401k. I don't have that kind of money just sitting around. No, Dad. That's the great part. We don't need your money. We just need you to co-sign. The bank just needs a stable asset as collateral and, well, your apartment is paid off. There it was, my home, the place I had shared with Clara for 35 years, the only thing of value I had left in the world. Emily, I can't. I won't. I will not risk my home. Her voice turned to ice. It was instantaneous. I can't believe you. After everything Trevor has done for us. For me. What has he done, Emily? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Besides, move you into a house you can't afford and buy you a car that belongs to the bank. He loves me. He gives us a beautiful life. I thought you'd want to help your family. I knew this would happen. Trevor said you wouldn't do it. He said you don't trust him. This isn't about trust, Emily. It's about math. This is a bad investment. And the answer is no. I have to go, she'd said. The click was loud in my ear. That was a week ago. We hadn't spoken since. This invitation to Christmas dinner wasn't an olive branch. It was a summons. This was my punishment, or perhaps my final test. I was supposed to show up hat in hand and apologize for not mortgaging my future for his sure thing. I pulled onto their street. The house was lit up like a landing strip, and the cars. My stomach clenched. There in their driveway was a brand new black Escalade, the kind with the ridiculous rims. That's new. That's a $100,000 vehicle, minimum. How does a man who needs someone to co-sign a $150,000 loan buy a new Escalade? My mind. The part of me that spent 40 years following paper trails went on high alert. This wasn't just bad math. This wasn't just poor financial planning. This was a lie. I parked my Camry down the block under a flickering streetlight. I felt like I was on a stakeout. Old habits die hard. I pulled my collar tight. The sleet was turning to ice. I walked up the heated stone pathway. The music was thumping. I could feel the bass through the soles of my shoes. It was some pop song, loud and repetitive. The front door was a garish cherry red adorned with a wreath so large it looked like it was trying to swallow the entrance. I rang the bell. I could hear the chime faintly inside a polite ding-dong that was immediately drowned out by the music. I waited. The wind was brutal. I rang it again. Harder this time. Nothing. I could hear laughter. Loud, drunken laughter. I'm standing in the freezing cold, and they can't even be bothered to answer the door. I have a key. Emily gave it to me years ago for emergencies. I'd never used it. I slid it into my pocket, my fingers brushing the cold metal. I felt like this qualified. I took out the key, slid it into the lock, and turned it. I opened the door, just a crack. The wave of heat, perfume, and noise hit me in the face. The foyer was packed. I saw dozens of people I didn't recognize, all holding champagne flutes, all dressed in designer labels. Sequins. Velvet. I stepped inside into the shadows of the hallway. No one saw me. They were all focused on the center of the living room where Trevor was standing on the coffee table. He was wearing a red velvet blazer. He looked like a third-rate game show host. Okay, everyone, he shouted, and the crowd slowly quieted down. He raised his glass. A toast, and he looked over at Emily, who was gazing up at him, her eyes shining with an adoration that made me sick. To my beautiful wife, Emily, for standing by me while we build our empire. A few people cheered. To this amazing house, more cheers, and a final toast, he said, his voice dropping into that oily conspiratorial tone he uses when he thinks he's being charming. To a future, with no more complications. A few people laughed, confused. Then a man in a cashmere sweater, a stranger, shouted, "Hey, Trevor, where's your father-in-law? I thought the chief was coming." Trevor's face split into a wide, ugly grin. The room went quiet, waiting for the punchline. "Oh, the old man," he said. "He's late, as usual." He paused, letting the silence hang. "Thank God it's so much better without him here, right?" He looked around the room, grinning. "I hope he's gone for good." The room erupted. It wasn't polite laughter. It was a loud, genuine, cruel roar. These people, his new wealthy friends, were laughing at me. At the old man. The complication. I looked for Emily, my daughter. She was standing right next to him. I watched her face. She blushed. She looked down. And then she hit his arm playfully. "Trevor, be nice," she giggled. She giggled. She didn't defend me. She didn't look horrified. She didn't walk away. She giggled. She was embarrassed by him, not for me. That was the moment. That was the final confirmation. The last thread of my promise to Clara snapped. I was still in the shadow of the hallway. No one had seen me. I felt nothing. No tears. No burning rage. Just cold. A profound, clear, absolute cold. The part of me that was Dad just died. The part of me that was Matthias Hayes' IRS criminal investigation just took control. I looked at the scene one last time. The expensive clothes, the champagne, the new Escalade outside, the $150,000 loan request, the lies. It all clicked into place. This wasn't a family dinner. It was a case file. I put my hand on the doorknob. I turned it slowly, silently. I pulled the heavy door toward me. I stepped back out into the freezing sleet. I closed the door, listening, waiting until I heard the latch engage with a soft, final click. I walked back to my Camry. As I sat in the driver's seat, the engine block ticking as it cooled, my phone buzzed in my pocket. The screen lit up Emily. I silenced the call. It buzzed again immediately. "Emily." I held the power button down and watched the screen go black. I started the car. The engine hummed its quiet, reliable tune. I am not a retired accountant. I am not a grieving widower. I am an investigator. And my son-in-law, Trevor Grant, has just become my primary target. The operation begins tonight. The drive back was silent. The sleet had stopped leaving the city streets slick and black under the holiday lights. The reds and greens looked garish, almost mocking. I didn't turn the radio on. I just drove my hands steady on the wheel of my 10-year-old car. My apartment building is old brick built in the 50s. The lobby smells faintly of wax polish and old coffee. I nodded to the night doorman Sal, who was half asleep over a newspaper. He nodded back. To him, I'm just Mr. Hayes in 5B, the quiet retiree, the widower. I let myself into my apartment. The air was still. It is not a dump, as Trevor calls it. It is precise. Every book on my shelf is organized by subject. Every surface is clear. There is no clutter. My late wife Clara used to say I lived like a monk even when she was alive. I told her I just liked order. Chaos, I told her, is the enemy. I hung my coat on the hook. I placed my keys in the small glass bowl by the door. I did not turn on the main lights, just the small green-shaded banker's lamp on my desk in the living room corner. The room was cast in shadow and light. I felt calm. The shock from the party, the sting of my daughter's laughter, it had all faded. It was replaced by something else. A cold, sharp focus. The work was beginning. I made tea. Earl Grey. I sat at my desk, an old heavy mahogany piece that Clara had hated. She said it looked like it belonged to a judge too severe for a home. I always told her it was just office furniture I'd bought from a government surplus sale. This desk was where I'd balanced my checkbook for 30 years. This was where I paid my utility bills and where I had helped Emily with her college applications, patiently explaining financial aid forms. It was the desk of a simple retired accountant. And that was the biggest lie of all. I looked at the framed photo on the desk. Clara and a 6-year-old Emily, both squinting and smiling on the beach in Santa Monica. I picked it up. "You were wrong about him, Clara," I whispered to the glass. "You said he was charming. You said he just needed direction. But you can't direct a snake. You can only cage it." I put the photo down precisely where it had been. My hand went to the bottom right drawer of the desk. The drawer Trevor had once tried to open idly when he was visiting. "What's in here, chief? Old tax returns," he'd joked, rattling the locked handle. "Just personal papers." I'd said, my voice flat, and he'd lost interest, turning his attention back to his phone. The lock wasn't much, just a simple wafer lock. It wasn't meant to stop a professional. It was meant to stop family. It was meant to maintain the separation between the man I was at home and the man I had been for 41 years. I took a small flat key from the back of my desk blotter, hidden beneath a stack of old pay stubs. I inserted it. The soft click of the lock opening was louder than all the laughter at the party. The drawer slid open silently on well-oiled runners. It didn't contain tax returns or old letters. It smelled of old leather and metal polish. Inside, resting on a bed of worn black velvet, was my old life. A pair of Smith & Wesson handcuffs scratched from use, a challenge coin from the Treasury Department, and my badge. I picked up the leather wallet. It was worn at the edges, curved perfectly, from 40 years of being pressed against my hip. I opened it. On one side, the gold badge, U.S. Treasury, Special Agent. On the other side, the credential. Faded the plastic laminate peeling at the top corner, but the words still perfectly clear. Matthias Hayes, Criminal Investigator, Internal Revenue Service, CI. My daughter was right. I hadn't been an accountant. Accountants look at the numbers and make sure they add up. I looked at the numbers to figure out why they didn't. I didn't balance books. I hunted men. I hunted tax evaders, money launderers, and cartel financiers. I was the man they sent in when the paper trail was the only witness left. I was, as my old partner used to call me, a financial bloodhound. I could smell a lie through a balance sheet. And my son-in-law, Trevor Grant. Trevor smelled like a slaughterhouse. He thought I was a harmless old man. He thought I was a complication he could just sweep aside with a laugh. He had no idea what I was. He had no idea what I was capable of. He had made the cardinal mistake of the amateur criminal. He underestimated the quiet man in the corner. He mistook simplicity for stupidity. He mistook my patience for weakness. I closed the badge wallet and placed it on the desk next to the green lamp. The gold seal caught the light. My entire career, my entire life had been built on one simple, unbreakable rule. A rule I had taught every rookie agent who had the misfortune of being assigned to me. Rule number 1 of CI. Everybody lies. Wives lie to husbands. Partners lie to partners. Children lie to parents. Everybody. They lie about what they earned, what they spent, where they were. They lie because of greed, because of fear, because of shame, because of pride. I had listened to the most powerful men in the city lie to my face, their hands steady, their eyes clear, while I held the offshore bank statements that proved their entire life was a fraud. Trevor was no different. He was just sloppier. He wasn't laughing at a retired accountant. He was laughing at a hunter. And he had just invited the hunter into his house, shown him the brand new Escalade, and bragged about his good fortune while asking for a loan. I sat back, the leather of my old chair creaking in the silence. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by that familiar, cold, sharp focus. "I hope he's gone for good," he'd said. "I'm not gone, Trevor," I said to the empty room. "I'm just getting started." I turned on my computer. Not the new sleek laptop Emily had given me for Christmas last year, the one I knew she could probably access. I turned on my old secure terminal, the heavy black tower hidden in the back of my closet under a pile of old sweaters. The one that connected to nothing except the databases I still knew how to access. The one that was scrubbed clean every night. Rule number 2, I murmured as the screen flickered to life. Trust the numbers. I began to type. Trevor Grant. Emily Hayes Grant. The hunt had begun. My terminal hummed quietly in the small insulated closet. The green cursor blinked on the black screen. I wasn't just an accountant. I was a financial bloodhound. And the first scent of prey is always an inconsistency. A smell that's just wrong. Trevor needed $150,000. He needed it badly enough to ask me, to risk angering his wife's complication. That was fact number 1. Trevor just bought a brand new Cadillac Escalade, a vehicle that starts at over $100,000, and knowing him, his was fully loaded. That was fact number 2. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. How does a man who needs a $150,000 loan simultaneously acquire a $100,000 asset? The simple answer is he doesn't. Not legally. Not unless the money for the car came from an illegitimate source he can't declare, and the loan is for something else entirely. Or the car itself is part of the grift. I started a new case file in my encrypted drive. Grant Trevor J. For years I've watched him. I observed his spending habits with the same detached interest I used to watch targets at high-end restaurants. He always picked up the check, but he always paid with a different credit card. He'd fan them out like a poker hand, a shiny new Amex, a Visa signature, a MasterCard. Black. A classic sign of kiting or surfing. Paying one card with a cash advance from another. It's a house of cards. A man living on borrowed time and borrowed money. He had no savings. I knew this because Emily had tearfully borrowed $5,000 from me 3 years ago just after they moved in together. It's just to cover the security deposit and first month's rent, Dad. Trevor's commission check is late. I gave her the money. I never saw it again. I never asked for it. I just filed it away. A data point. So a man with no savings, terrible credit, and a history of borrowing from family needs a massive loan. But he's driving a new Escalade. Okay, Trevor, I murmured to the screen. Let's see the numbers. I couldn't use my old IRS credentials. That would be illegal, and I am above all a man of procedure. But my 40-year career hadn't just given me a pension. It had given me a network. People who owed me favors. People who, like me, enjoyed solving puzzles. I picked up my burner phone, not my regular cell. This one was old, heavy, and stored in a lead-lined pouch. I only had 3 numbers in it. One was for a lawyer, one was for a bondsman, and one was for Ben. Ben Abramson. Ben was a data wizard. He ran one of the largest private credit analysis firms in the country, a firm that specialized in forensic accounting for high-net-worth individuals. In reality, he found things that people paid a lot of money to keep hidden. We'd crossed paths on a case in the 90s. I'd kept him out of a federal indictment. He'd owed me ever since, Anshul. I dialed. He picked up on the second ring. This had better be good, Matthias. It's Christmas night. His voice was gravelly, just as I remembered. Merry Christmas to you too, Ben. Don't Merry Christmas me. What do you need? I'm missing. It's a wonderful life for this. I need a full workup, asset, credit, and liability. A ghost run. No footprints. For who, Ta-Sung? My son-in-law, Trevor Grant, Grant. Social is... I recited the 9 digits from memory. I had run them the day he started dating Emily. Ben was silent for a moment. I could hear him typing. Your son-in-law thought you were retired, Matthias. Don't tell me you're starting a family business. Just run the numbers, Ben. I need to know what he owes, who he owes it to, and how he's paying for his toys. He's driving a new Escalade. An Escalade? Ben whistled. Ambitious. Okay. This is a holiday rate, you know. It'll cost you. Just send me the bill, Ben. I need it an hour ago. I'll have a preliminary file on your secure server by morning. But Matthias, be careful. Careful of what? A guy with bad credit who suddenly has a six-figure car. He's not being financed. He's being backed. And the people who back those kinds of purchases aren't banks. They don't send polite letters when you miss a payment. That's exactly what I need to know. Thank you, Ben. I hung up the wait. This was always the hardest part. The part where you have nothing but your instincts. And my instincts were screaming. Trevor wasn't just a financial leech. He was desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. I walked to my kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. I looked at the small, cheap card Emily had sent me. Merry Christmas, Dad love E&T. E&T, as if they were a single unit. But they weren't. Emily was the shield. I saw it now. Trevor was using her. Her name, her clean credit history, what was left of it, and her relationship with me. The $150,000 loan. Why co-sign? Why not just ask for the money? Because he knew I wouldn't give it to him. But co-signing, that's a different kind of lie. It's a lie of omission. He wasn't asking me for money, he was asking for my name. A name he could use to secure the loan default on it and leave me holding the bag. And the Escalade. That wasn't a purchase. That was a payment, or a gift. A gift from someone who was using him. My mind raced. A guy with that much debt doesn't buy a luxury car. He's given a luxury car by his handlers to keep him compliant, to make him feel successful while they sink their hooks in deeper. This wasn't just about my apartment. This was about my daughter. She was married to a man who was at best a fool and at worst a willing participant in something dark. I looked at the case file I had started. Grant Trevor J. The $150,000 wasn't for a startup. That was the lie he told Emily. That was the lie she told me. A man who owes $300,000 to loan sharks doesn't need seed money. He needs buyout money. He was trying to use my home to pay off his gambling debts before the interest or the enforcers broke his legs. Or worse. And the toast. I hope he's gone for good. A cold dread settled over me. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't just an insult. If I, the complication, was gone, if I were to have a sudden tragic accident, appropriate for a 70-year-old man, who would inherit my paid-off apartment, my only heir? Emily. And who controlled Emily Trevor? The $150,000 wasn't plan A. My apartment was. I sat at my desk for a long time watching the green cursor blink, waiting for Ben's report. The hunter was back, and the prey had just threatened my family. No. The prey was my family. I didn't sleep. An investigator doesn't sleep when a case is open. I sat at my desk, the green lamp casting a small pool of light in the pre-dawn darkness. Christmas morning. I could hear the first faint sounds of the city waking up. A distant snowplow, an early bus. I drank my tea. It was cold. I hadn't noticed. My mind was sorting the data points. The Escalade. The $150,000 loan. The toast. The giggle. The debts I already knew about. It was a puzzle, but the centerpiece was missing. Ben had the centerpiece. At 5:04 a.m. the burner phone vibrated. A single harsh buzz. It slid across the polished wood of my desk. I let it buzz a second time before picking it up. Hayes. Matthias, it's Ben. Merry Christmas. His voice was tired. He'd been working all night. What do you have for me, Ben? I heard him take a long drag from a cigarette. Well, first off, he said, your son-in-law is a financial ghost. The guy's credit score is in the 400s. He's got more defaults than I've had hot dinners. He has 22 active credit cards, all of them maxed out to the limit. He's juggling debt, moving balances, taking cash advances to make minimum payments. He's a classic house of cards. How this guy is even walking around is a miracle. I wasn't surprised. I had suspected as much. That explains the loan request. No bank would touch him. Banks. Ben let out a short, harsh laugh. Matthias, banks are the least of this guy's problems. Banks just ruin your credit. The people he owes money to, they ruin your health. My knuckles tightened on the phone. What did you find? The credit cards are just the window dressing, Matthias. The real debt, it's private, and it's big. I found markers from 3 different offshore sportsbooks. I found electronic trails for high-interest juice loans. These aren't student loans, my friend. These are the kind of debts you pay on time every time. How much, Ben? Another pause. I heard him tapping on his keyboard. From what I can piece together in the last 6 hours, the total is north of $300,000. $300K, and the interest on that, it's probably another 10 grand a week. He's not just in debt, Matthias. He's drowning. $300,000. The number hung in the air. The Escalade, the velvet jacket, the champagne toast. It was all a performance. A desperate, terrified performance. He's being squeezed. I said the words tasting like ash. Squeezed, crushed, and probably panicking, Ben agreed. These private lenders, they don't send polite letters, Matthias. They send large men who don't knock. This Trevor Grant isn't just in financial trouble. He's in physical trouble. He needed that $150,000 from you. He needed it yesterday. Now it all made sense. The loan wasn't for a startup. It was a ransom. It was a desperate attempt to pay off the most violent of his creditors before they came to collect. And I had said no. I had signed his death warrant, or so he thought. Thank you, Ben. Send me the full file, encrypted. Will do. And Matthias, yes, be careful. A man who owes that much money to those kinds of people, he's not just desperate. He's a cornered animal. And cornered animals bite everyone, especially the people closest to them. I know, I said. I'm counting on it. I hung up. I stood up and walked to the window. The sky was turning a dark, bruised purple. Christmas morning. $300,000 in loan shark debt. But he was still driving a brand new $100,000 Escalade. The math still didn't add up. Where did the car come from? Why would his creditors give him an asset? Unless the car wasn't his. Unless the car was a tool. And then a new, colder thought hit me. My mind went back to the toast. I hope he's gone for good. He needed money. He needed it fast. I had said no. What was his plan B? I looked at the phone. He had 22 maxed-out credit cards. He had $300,000 in private debt. He had nothing. Except a wife. A wife who was the sole heir to a 70-year-old man who lived in a paid-off apartment in a prime location. My gaze drifted to the framed photo of Clara and Emily. "Oh, Emily," I whispered. "This was never just about a loan. This was about my assets." But there was still a missing piece. That Escalade, and that $200,000 in cash that Ben had mentioned. The money that had been washed through my daughter's name. Where did that money come from? I held the phone, the cold plastic pressed against my ear. $300,000. The number was abstract, but the implications were violently real. Ben was right. Trevor was a cornered animal. "Ben," I said, my voice low and steady. "This is more than I thought. Thank you. Send me the file." "Wait," Ben said. I heard him light another cigarette, the small, sharp click of his lighter. I'm not done. That's just the debt. That's not the weird part. My blood went cold. Weird part? The guy is drowning in debt, Ben said, his voice dropping. He's got collection agencies from 3 states trying to garnish wages he doesn't have. He's a financial leper. So Matthias, why does he have an offshore account in the Cayman Islands? I felt my stomach drop. What? An account was opened 6 months ago at a private bank in Grand Cayman. It's not in his name. It's in his wife's name. Emily Hayes Grant. I gripped the edge of my desk. The mahogany felt slick beneath my fingers. Emily. My daughter. Her name on an offshore account. Ben, are you sure? Matthias. When am I ever not sure? The routing numbers don't lie. It's her. Social Security number matches. It's a shell, but she's the beneficial owner. Now here's the kicker. Are you sitting down? I'm sitting. The account is 6 months old. In that time, it has received a series of structured cash deposits, small amounts just under the $10,000 reporting threshold, from 5 different banks in 3 different states. It's classic structuring. It's amateurish, but it's effective if no one is looking. How much, Ben? Total deposits in 6 months, $210,000. U.S. cash. I closed my eyes. The silence on the line stretched. Ben knew what those words meant. I knew what those words meant. 40 years of my life had been dedicated to hunting people who did exactly this. Matthias. Ben's voice was cautious now. Money laundering, I whispered. Bingo, Ben said. Your son-in-law isn't just a gambler, Matthias. He's a washer. Or he's working for one. He's running dirty money, and he's using your daughter as the cutout. I hung up the phone. I didn't say goodbye. I just placed the receiver back in its cradle. I stood up and walked to the window. The sky was gray. It was Christmas morning. $210,000 in cash. My mind, the part of me that was not a father, but an investigator, started connecting the pieces. The cold, hard machinery of my old job clicked into gear. A man doesn't accumulate $300,000 in gambling debts and simultaneously get handed $200,000 in cash to wash. Those are 2 different worlds. Or are they? What if the debt and the cash are linked? What if he's not just a gambler, but a bookie or an operator? What if the $200,000 is the profit, and the $300,000 is the debt he owes to his criminal partners? This isn't just about a degenerate gambler trying to stay afloat. This is about a small-time crook who got in over his head with serious players. The Escalade. It wasn't a purchase. It was a bonus. A gift from his bosses to keep him happy, to make him feel successful, while they used him to move their money. And Emily, my daughter. I sank into my chair. Was she a willing participant? My heart screamed no. She was weak, she was manipulated, but she wasn't a criminal. But my brain, my investigator brain, was merciless. She giggled. When Trevor said, "I hope he's gone for good," she giggled. Was that the giggle of an embarrassed wife, or the giggle of a co-conspirator who was in on the joke? The joke being that the old man, the complication, was so clueless, he had no idea they were sitting on a $200,000 pile of dirty money, the $150,000 loan request. It was a test. It was a probe. They weren't just asking for a cosigner. They were testing my resources. They were testing my stupidity. If I had said yes, it would have confirmed their narrative that I was just a financially naive old man, a resource to be tapped, an asset to be liquidated when the time was right. And my refusal wasn't just a no. It was a threat. It was a sign that I wasn't as easily controlled as they thought. And what happens when a cornered animal like Trevor, who owes $300,000 to killers, meets an unexpected obstacle? I hope he's gone for good. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a wish. It was Plan B. My God. This was no longer a family dispute. This was no longer about a rude son-in-law or a disrespectful daughter. This was a federal case. Money laundering, conspiracy, and now, potential solicitation for murder. My daughter was in the middle of it. She was either a victim or a co-conspirator, and in the eyes of the law, it often didn't matter. Her name was on the account. She was the legal owner of that dirty money. When they came for Trevor, they would come for her too. I felt a surge of adrenaline so powerful it made my hands shake. I was in a race. I was in a race against the people Trevor owed money to, and I was in a race against my own side. My old colleagues. If an IRS CI agent or an FBI agent caught wind of this structuring, if they found that Cayman account before I did, they wouldn't see Emily, my daughter. They would see Emily Hayes Grant, money launderer. She would be a number in a file, an indictment, a statistic. I had to get to her first. I had to get to him first. I had to find out where that $200,000 came from. I looked at the clock. 5:30 a.m. Christmas morning. They would be asleep. They would be sleeping off the champagne, dreaming of their empire. My mind flashed to the Escalade. A car like that, it's not bought with a check. It's leased or it's paid for with a wire transfer. There would be paperwork. And the $150,000 loan. Trevor wouldn't just have that as a vague idea. He'd have the documents. The loan sharks he was dealing with, they use contracts. Brutal, ironclad, illegal contracts. He would have them somewhere. And the Cayman account. Emily would have the account information, the bank codes. Did she even know what she had? I had to get into that house. Not as a father, but as an investigator. I went to the closet and pulled out a small, heavy, waterproof duffel bag from the floor. My old go bag. I didn't need the items in it. Not anymore. But I needed the skills it represented. I picked up the burner phone. I dialed Ben again. Matthias, what now? Ben, I need something else. I need the name of Trevor's partners, the ones he owes money to. Matthias, that's not something you find on a credit report. That's digging in the dirt. That's dangerous. I know what it is. I know who to ask. I just need a starting point. The sports books. Who backs them? Ben was silent. You're not retired anymore, are you? I'm just a father, Ben. A father trying to understand his daughter's business. Right, Ben said. His business. I'll see what I can find. But Matthias, if I find a name, you don't call them. You call me. You understand? I understand. I lied. No, you don't. Ben sighed. The primary creditor on his biggest loan, the name associated with the LLC is Krupka Enterprises, Anton Krupka. The name hit me. I knew that name. I'd heard it whispered in case briefings years ago. Not local, Eastern European. The kind of man who didn't just break your legs. He ended you. Matthias, are you there? I'm here, Ben. Thank you. I hung up. Anton Krupka. Trevor wasn't just in debt to a loan shark. He was in business with the mob, and he was using my daughter to wash their money. The urgency changed. It was no longer a race. It was a recovery operation. I had to get those documents. I had to find out what Trevor had on Krupka and what Krupka had on him. I looked at the key to Emily's house still on my desk from my game day visits. I was going back. And this time I wasn't knocking. My blood ran cold. Anton Krupka. I stood up from the desk and walked to the window, staring down at the dark, quiet street. This changed everything. Krupka wasn't just a loan shark. He was an operator. He didn't just lend money. He moved it. He was a major player in Eastern European organized crime, a man my old division had been trying to build a case against for a decade. Trevor wasn't just a gambler. He was an employee. The fog in my mind cleared, replaced by a terrible, sharp-edged certainty. The pieces of the puzzle began to slam into place, forming a picture far uglier than I could have imagined. The $300,000 debt wasn't just from bad bets. It was the amount he owed Krupke. Maybe he'd lost it, or maybe he'd stolen it. It didn't matter. He was on the hook. The $150,000 loan he wanted from me. That wasn't for a startup. That was his buyout. That was the desperate, frantic payment he needed to make to Krupke's men before they put him in the ground. He was terrified. That's why he was so sloppy. That's why he'd risk asking me, the chief, the one person he always sneered at. He wasn't just desperate for cash. He was desperate for his life. But wait. My mind snagged on the inconsistency. If he was that desperate for $150,000, why was he sitting on $210,000 in cash in the Caymans? Ben's words echoed $210,000. U.S. cash. Why would a man who is a day away from having his legs broken sit on a pile of cash larger than his debt? Why not use the laundered money to pay off the loan shark? I paced the small apartment. Once. Twice. Then I stopped. Because it wasn't his money. Of course. It was Krupke's money. Trevor wasn't a bookie. He was a mule. A launderer. Krupke was giving him cash, and Trevor's job was to wash it to make it clean by structuring it through my daughter's account. But the numbers. The debt was $300,000. The cash in the account was only $200,000. No. I was wrong again. I went back to my desk. I looked at the file. The math was simple, and it was brutal. The $200,000 in the Cayman account wasn't for Krupke. It was from Krupke. It was the money Trevor had successfully laundered for them, but the $300,000, that was separate. That was his personal debt, his gambling, his greed. He was in an impossible position. He owed his mob bosses $300,000, but he couldn't touch the $200,000 he was holding for them, because if he did, they wouldn't just break his legs. They would execute him. So he had two separate deadly problems. He needed to pay his personal debt to Krupke, and he needed to deliver the clean money to Krupke. He was trapped. He had no way out. Unless he could find a third source of money. A clean source. A source no one was watching. A $150,000 loan. Oh God, I whispered. He needed my money to pay off his mob debts. But the $200,000 in the Cayman account, why was it still just sitting there? Why hadn't he finished the job and wired it to Krupke's people? A new, colder realization settled in. Because he wasn't going to. The $210,000 wasn't for Krupke. It was for Trevor. That was his getaway fund. That was his plan. He was going to skim from the mob. His plan was insane. He was going to use my name and my apartment to get a $150,000 loan. He would use that clean money to pay off his personal gambling debt. That would make Krupke happy, get the enforcers off his back and buy him time. Then, with his debts cleared and his bosses thinking he was a good little earner, he would take the $210,000 he was laundering and run. He'd vanish. He was going to steal from me to pay the mob, and then steal from the mob for himself. And the escalade. That was him spending his stolen money before he even had it. The arrogance. The sheer, blinding arrogance of it. And Emily, my daughter, she would be left behind. She would be the one whose name was on the fraudulent loan. She would be the one whose name was on the empty offshore account. When Krupke realized his money and his man were gone, who would he come looking for? He would come for Emily. My blood turned to ice. I hope he's gone for good. That toast. It wasn't about me. It was about him. He was projecting. He was already seeing himself on a beach, gone for good. But I was still a problem. The complication. If I was still around, I could contest the fraudulent loan on my apartment. I could report it. The whole scheme would unravel before he could escape. He needed me out of the way. Gone for good. He wasn't just wishing for it. He was planning on it. I had to get into that house. I had to find the paperwork for that loan. I had to find the account details for that Cayman bank. I had to get the evidence. Not just to stop Trevor, but to save Emily, to prove she was a pawn, not a player. I looked at the clock. 3:15 a.m., Christmas morning. The party would be long over. They would be asleep, drunk on champagne and arrogance. I went to my closet and pulled out the old go bag. I didn't need the items inside. I just needed my old skills. I grabbed my keys. I grabbed my burner phone. I left my apartment a ghost in the silent hallway. I was no longer Matthias, the grieving father. I was Agent Hayes, and I was going to war. I drove back to their street. It was 3:17. The rain had washed the ice off the roads, but the air was biting. I parked my Camry 3 blocks away in the shadow of a large oak tree. An old habit. Never park in the target's line of sight. The neighborhood was dead. The party houses were dark. Even the gaudy Christmas lights on Trevor's lawn had been turned off. Good. A dark house is an honest house. It's where the real evidence lives. I walked silently. My shoes, rubber-soled and practical, made no sound on the wet pavement. I moved through the shadows of the manicured hedges, just another old man walking his dog, if anyone had been awake to see. But they weren't. I let myself into the backyard through the side gate. The latch was unlatched. Sloppy. Trevor was all about the illusion of security, the big Escalade, the expensive neighborhood. But he was sloppy with the details. I stood at the back door for a full 60 seconds, listening. Nothing. Just the hum of the oversized refrigerator and the ticking of a gaudy Live, Laugh, Love clock in the kitchen. I pulled the spare key from my pocket, the one Emily had given me. Just in case, Dad. I slid the key into the lock. It was a good lock, expensive, but a key is a key. The deadbolt turned with a heavy, oiled thunk. It sounded like a cannon in the silence. I froze. I waited. Still nothing. I opened the door an inch at a time and slipped inside. The smell hit me first. Stale champagne, the greasy odor of cold party food, and something else. A faint, sick-sweet smell. Trevor's cologne. It was everywhere, as if he'd marked his territory. The house was a wreck. This was not the festive scene I had glimpsed hours earlier. This was the aftermath. Half-eaten plates of food were stacked on the granite countertops. Empty bottles, vodka, gin, whiskey brands I knew cost $300 a bottle littered the floor. Red wine was spilled on the white marble tiles like a fake bloodstain. This wasn't a celebration. It was a binge. A last supper. I didn't bother with the living room. The evidence I needed wouldn't be in plain sight. I moved through the darkness, my eyes adjusted. I was an investigator in a compromised scene. Everything was evidence. The sheer number of empty bottles told me they weren't just drinking. They were trying to forget something, or trying to build up the courage for something. I moved down the hall. My target was the room Trevor called his study, a ridiculous name for a small spare bedroom where he played at being a big shot. I reached the door. I put my hand on the brass knob. I turned it slowly. It didn't budge. Locked. I smiled in the dark. A cheap residential privacy lock. The kind you buy at Home Depot for $20. The kind you put on a bathroom door, not an office. He was an amateur. He was trying to hide something, but he didn't even know how. I reached into my wallet. Not the part with my driver's license or my single credit card. I reached into a hidden fold in the leather, a compartment I had sewn in myself 30 years ago. I pulled out a small flat steel case. Inside a set of picks, my old tools, my old friends. I slid the tension wrench into the bottom of the keyhole. I applied the slightest pressure, just enough to bind the pins. Then I took the small hook pick. This was muscle memory. It was like riding a bike. I probed the lock. Pin 1. Click. Pin 2. Click. Pin 3. He'd bought a 5-pin tumbler. He'd probably thought it was high security. Click. Click. The 5th pin was stubborn. It felt gritty. I eased off the tension wrench just a fraction and pushed the pin again. Click. The cylinder turned. The knob was free. The entire process took less than 15 seconds. I pushed the door open slowly, leading with my shoulder, just in case he'd rigged something. He hadn't. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me, not all the way. I left it open just a crack. Rule number 3, always have an exit. The study was worse than the kitchen. It smelled of that cologne and fear. A sour, acidic smell. I didn't turn on the light. I used the small, high-powered pen light from my keychain. A beam of white light tight as a needle. The desk was a disaster. Piles of unopened mail, final notices, envelopes stamped in red, urgent, overdue. This was the desk of a man who was out of time. I went straight for the main desk drawer. Locked. Of course, this one was better. A proper filing cabinet lock. It took me almost a minute. The drawer slid open with a soft shing of metal on metal. I aimed my light inside. And there it was. My pen light cut through the darkness of the drawer. It was chaos. Not the organized chaos of my own desk, but the desperate chaos of a man trying to hide things from himself. Crumpled receipts from gas stations, a handful of loose change, dried-out pens, a single sad-looking cufflink, a stack of old declined credit cards cut in half. This was the graveyard of his previous failed lives. I ran my fingers along the side of the drawer under the lip. Nothing. I pushed the junk aside. My fingers hit something hard. A false bottom, no. A leather-bound portfolio. It was new, expensive, and completely out of place in this drawer of failures. It was embossed with gold lettering. Grant Holdings Incorporated. I almost laughed. Holdings. The arrogance. Trevor didn't hold anything. He owed. I lifted it out. It was heavy. I placed it on the desk and opened it. Inside it was meticulously organized. A terrifying contrast to the drawer it came from. This was his real desk. This was the plan. My light scanned the tabs. Invoices. Projections. Offshore. I felt my pulse quicken. I went to offshore first. There it was. Bank statements from Grand Cayman. The account number. And the name Emily Hayes Grant. My daughter. My foolish blind daughter. I saw the deposits. Just as Ben had said. Structured. 10,000 here. 9,500 there. A total of $210,000. I saw withdrawal slips. $50,000 wired 2 weeks ago. I checked the Invoices tab. A matching invoice from Krupka Enterprises. Stamped paid. So he was paying them. He was in the process of paying his debts. But where was he getting the money? He was washing it, yes, but he was also spending it. Then I saw the purchase order for the Escalade. It wasn't a lease. He'd bought it. Cash. $104,000. Paid in full last week. My mind was racing. He'd used the laundered money. He'd used Krupka's money to buy himself a toy. "You idiot," I whispered. "You magnificent suicidal idiot." He wasn't just in debt to the mob. He was stealing from them. He was laundering their cash and then spending it. He wasn't just a mule. He was a thief. This man was already dead. He just didn't know it. Krupka would find out. It was only a matter of time. This changed the motive. The $150,000 loan he wanted from me, it wasn't to pay Krupka. It was to replace the money he had stolen from Krupka before Krupka found out. He was trying to plug a hole in a dam with my house. I kept digging. I needed to find the loan application. It had to be here. I felt a smaller folder tucked into the back sleeve of the leather portfolio. It wasn't embossed. It was a plain manila folder. It had one word written on it in Trevor's sloppy handwriting, Apex. I opened it. The letterhead was aggressive. Apex, Private Capital. When the banks say no, we say yes. My skin crawled. I knew this world. This wasn't a bank. This was a hard money lender. The kind of people who operate in a legal gray area charging interest rates that would make a loan shark blush. They're faster than banks and their foreclosure process is efficient. I read the first page. It was a loan application. Principal amount, $150,000. Interest rate, 22.5% variable. Origination fee, $15,000 due at signing. This wasn't a loan. It was an execution. Trevor wasn't trying to build a business. He was trying to survive the next 30 days. My light scanned the pages. Borrower Trevor Grant. Co-borrower Emily Hayes Grant. Of course, he'd roped her into this too. If he defaulted, they would come for her. But that wasn't enough. A lender like Apex, they wouldn't just take the signatures of two people drowning in debt. They'd want something real. They'd want collateral. I turned the page to the collateral agreement. My heart stopped. I read the line, but my brain couldn't process it. I read it again. Secured collateral. The property located at 412 East 79th Street, Apartment 5B, New York, New York. Title holder, Matthias Hayes. I couldn't breathe. My apartment. My home. The home I shared with Clara. The home I paid off. The only thing I owned. This monster. This child. He was using my home, my life to pay for his stupidity. I thought, this is impossible. They'd need my signature. I never signed this. My hands were shaking. Not with fear. With a rage so cold it burned. I turned the page. The last page. The signature page. And there it was. Matthias Hayes. It was my signature. It was perfect. The loop on the H, the sharp downstroke on the Y, the slight upward tilt I always gave it. It was flawless. You bastard! I said, my voice a low growl in the silent room. You absolute bastard! When did he get this? And then I remembered. A drip-fed memory, sharp and sickening. 2 months ago, a Saturday. I was watching the game. Trevor had stopped by unannounced. He'd seemed helpful. Hey, Chief, I'm just helping Emily consolidate some of her old student loans. The bank needs a good faith signature from a family member. It's not a cosign, it's just a character reference. Proves the family is stable. He'd pushed a stack of papers in front of me. It's just this bottom page, Dad. He'd called me Dad. He never called me Dad. I'd been distracted. The game was in the 9th inning. I'd scrawled my name, Matthias Hayes, on the line he'd pointed to. I hadn't even read the header. He hadn't gotten a sample. He'd gotten the real thing. He'd tricked me into signing a blank authorization. Or maybe he'd swapped the pages. It didn't matter. He had my signature on a legal binding document. He had my home. And the loan was pending. It hadn't been funded yet. They were waiting on one last thing. The toast. I hope he's gone for good. It all snapped into focus. It wasn't just a wish. It was a requirement. The loan company Apex, they couldn't seize the property of a living, breathing 70-year-old man without a fight. The legal battles would take years. But if the owner was gone, if he had a tragic accident, or if he was suddenly declared mentally incompetent and put in a home, then the sole heir, Emily, could take control of the estate. And her husband, Trevor, could finalize the loan, get his $150,000 payoff, Krupka, and flee the country with the $200,000 in laundered cash, leaving Emily to face the mob and the IRS. He wasn't just planning to rob me. He was planning to erase me. He was planning to destroy his wife. He wasn't a fool. He wasn't a desperate gambler. He was a sociopath. I stood there in the dark. The house was silent, but in my head it was deafening. The laughter at the party, the giggle, the champagne toast. Complications. That's what he'd called me. I took out my phone, my real phone. I turned off the pen light. I activated the camera. I photographed every single page. The Cayman account, the Krupka invoice, the Apex loan agreement, the forged signature page. I photographed the notices from the loan sharks. I photographed the maxed out credit card statements. I built my case. Then I put everything back. I put the manila folder in the portfolio. I put the portfolio in the drawer. I pushed the junk mail back on top of it. I locked the drawer. I wiped the knob. I wiped the desk. I slipped out of the office, closed the door, and used my pick to lock it again from the outside. I walked through the dark, wrecked house. I was no longer a guest. I was no longer a father-in-law. I was Agent Hayes, and I had my evidence. I let myself out the back door. The thunk of the deadbolt locking behind me was final. I walked back to my car as the first hint of gray light touched the sky. Christmas morning. Trevor Grant thought he was a player. He thought he was a wolf among sheep. He didn't realize. He had just invited the shepherd into the fold, and the shepherd was here to slaughter the wolf. I stood there in the dark, the beam of my penlight frozen on my own forged signature. My breath was shallow. My blood felt like ice in my veins. I understood everything. The puzzle pieces snapped together with a sickening final click. The $150,000 loan from Apex Private Capital, that wasn't for a startup. That was for Anton Krupka. It was the blood money he needed to pay off his gambling debts before Krupka's men came to collect. And he was using my home, my 30 years of life with Clara, as the collateral. The $210,000 in the Cayman account. The money he was supposed to be laundering for Krupka. He had no intention of giving it back. He'd already spent half of it on an Escalade. The rest was his getaway fund. He was going to steal from me to pay the mob, and then steal from the mob for himself. It was a plan born of pure, suicidal arrogance, and the toast. My mind flashed back to the party, the champagne, the laughter. I hope he's gone for good. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a drunken insult. It was a business plan. I was the complication. The loan from Apex couldn't be finalized. The funds couldn't be released as long as I was alive and well and living in apartment 5B. But if I disappeared, if I, a 70-year-old widower, had a tragic accident appropriate for my age, a fall down the stairs, a sudden unexpected illness, or even better, if my loving daughter and son-in-law became concerned about my mental state, if I started forgetting things, if I was suddenly declared mentally incompetent and put in a nursing home, my blood ran cold. Then Emily, my sole heir, would legally control my estate. She would control my apartment, and her husband Trevor would control her. He would finalize the loan. He would pay off Krupka, and then he would drain the Cayman account and vanish, leaving Emily to hold the bag. He was planning to leave her. He was planning to abandon my daughter to face the full terrible wrath of both the IRS and Anton Krupka. He wasn't just planning to rob me. He was planning to erase me. He was planning to destroy his own wife. My own daughter. I stood there paralyzed by the sheer cold-blooded geometry of his betrayal. Creak. The sound came from the hallway, a floorboard on the second floor. My training took over. I clicked off the penlight. The room was plunged back into absolute darkness. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I heard it again. Creak. Pause. Creak. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Someone was coming down the stairs. Trevor. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my hands were rock steady. I couldn't leave. Not without the evidence. I had one chance. I pulled out my phone. The real one. I unlocked it, the screen's glow so bright in the dark, it felt like a spotlight. I shielded it with my body, aiming it down at the desk. I had seconds. My fingers flew. Click. The Apex loan application. Click. The fraudulent signature page with my name. Click. The Cayman Bank statement. Click. The Krupka invoice. Click. The Escalade purchase order. The footsteps were at the bottom of the stairs. I heard the thwack of the refrigerator door opening in the kitchen, followed by the glug 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 of water being poured into a glass. He was thirsty. Drunk, probably. I kept shooting. The credit card statements, the loan shark letters, every page. My phone's camera was silent, but to me each snapshot sounded like a gunshot. I finished the last page of the Apex loan. I heard the glass set down hard on the granite counter. I slid the phone into my pocket. I put the manila folder back in the portfolio. I put the portfolio back in the drawer. I slid the junk mail on top of it. I closed the drawer. It made no sound. I stood up. I heard him walking from the kitchen. His footsteps were unsteady, shuffling. He was moving toward the study. He's coming here. My exit was blocked. The door was just a crack, but he was between me and the hallway. I didn't panic. I scanned the room. Window. Locked. A sheer drop to the concrete patio. No. Closet. I moved silently 2 steps and slipped into the small coat closet. I pulled the door almost shut, leaving a hairline crack to see through. I held my breath. The study door swung open. A bar of light from the hallway cut into the room. Trevor stood in the doorway, a dark silhouette. He was just in his boxers and a t-shirt. He swayed, holding a glass of water. He reached inside and flicked the light switch. Click, click, click. The light didn't come on. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The bulb had burned out. He was too drunk or too stupid to have replaced it. "Damn it," he muttered. He fumbled in the dark, his hand brushing the desk. He was looking for something. His wallet, his phone. Then his hand found the desk drawer, the one I had just locked. He pulled it. It held. He pulled it again harder. Rattle. What the? He turned, fumbled for his phone on the hallway table, and turned on its flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, illuminating the desk. I watched through the crack in the closet door. I saw his face. Puffy red eyes, bloodshot. He aimed the light at the keyhole. He saw it was locked. He grunted. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his own set of keys. He fumbled, trying to find the small desk key. Hurry up, old man, I thought. Go to bed. He couldn't find it. He cursed, frustrated, and slammed his fist on the desk. Whatever, he slurred. Tomorrow. He turned off his flashlight and stumbled back out into the hall, leaving the study door wide open. He shuffled back up the stairs. Creak, creak, creak. I waited. I counted to 300. 5 full minutes. Silence. I slipped out of the closet. I didn't bother relocking the office door. It didn't matter now. I walked through the wrecked living room, past the spilled wine and the ghost of the party. I went to the back door, unlocked the deadbolt, and stepped out into the night. The cold air hit my face. I've never been so glad to feel it. I locked the door behind me. I walked quickly, silently through the gate, down the street, and back to my car. I sat inside, my hands on the wheel, my heart still hammering. I had the evidence. I had the case. I looked back at the dark, silent, expensive house. "It's not a game, Trevor," I whispered. I started the car and drove away, just another old man disappearing into the dawn. "No," she was still screaming into the phone. "Dad, it's not like that. He wouldn't, he's just under a lot of pressure. This startup, it's everything to him. He said you had to sign as a character reference. That's all." I listened to her excuses, the lies she was telling herself, the lies he had fed her. It was pathetic. It was time to sever the final thread of her denial. "This isn't about a startup, Emily," I said, my voice like ice. "This is about Anton Krupka." The sobbing stopped. Instantly. It was as if I had thrown a switch. The silence that came from her end of the phone was the most terrifying sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of absolute, bottomless dread. "How?" she whispered. Her voice was no longer crying. It was a dry, raw croak. "How do you know that name?" So. She knew. That was the answer to my question. She wasn't just a pawn. She wasn't just a fool. She was a participant. "It doesn't matter how I know, Emily. What matters is that I know. I know about the $300,000 debt. I know about the men he owes. And I know why he's so desperate for my money." "Dad, please. You don't understand." She started, the panic rising in her voice again. "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said. "I just have one more question for you, and I want you to think very, very carefully before you answer me." "What?" "The Cayman account, Emily. The $210,000 in your name. Did you know about that too?" She just broke. The sound that came through the phone wasn't a sob. It was a scream. A full-throated animal scream of pure, unfiltered terror. She had finally realized that the game was over. She had finally realized I knew everything. "Dad, please," she shrieked. "You have to help us. He didn't tell me. I just signed the papers. He said it was an investment account for our future. I didn't know where the money came from. I didn't know." "You didn't know," I repeated. "You, a woman with a master's degree in finance, didn't know that structured cash deposits of just under $10,000 are a federal crime. You didn't know that an offshore account in your name holding $200,000 in untraceable cash was just a little irregular." I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. He said it was better if I didn't. Yes, Emily, it was better for him. Because now you're not just a co-signer on a fraudulent loan. You are an active participant in a money laundering operation for organized crime. "Oh God, oh God, oh God! Dad, please, what do I do? What do we do?" "There is no we, Emily," I said, my voice hard as granite. "There is only you. You are in the middle of a federal case. Your husband is about to abandon you and leave you to face Krupka's men and the IRS all by yourself." "He wouldn't," she sobbed. "He wouldn't do that to me. He loves me. He's just scared. He's upstairs right now. Is that why you giggled, Emily?" I cut her off. The question was a scalpel. "When he stood on that coffee table and toasted to me being gone for good. Were you in on that joke too? Were you laughing at the complication?" "No, I was drunk. I was embarrassed. She couldn't form a sentence. She was trapped. "You're in a terrible position, Emily," I said. "You're either a fool or a felon. And right now the federal government isn't going to care about the distinction. Your name is on everything. The loan, the offshore account. You are the legal face of his entire criminal enterprise." "But he's here," she insisted, a desperate childish plea. He's upstairs. He's sleeping. We can talk to him. We can fix this. I'll make him call them. He can explain. I was still parked on the dark street, my vantage point perfect. I had a clear view of their house. The lights in the master bedroom had been on. But as she was speaking, as she was insisting he was right there, I saw it. The light in the master bedroom on the second floor went dark. He's not upstairs, Emily, I said, my voice flat. He's leaving, right now. What? No, he's in the bathroom. No, Emily, I can see your house. He just turned off the bedroom light. He's been packing while you've been on the phone with me. He's on his way out. You're lying. You're trying to scare me. Go check. Go on. Go up the stairs. Go see if the man who loves you is still there. I heard her drop the phone. I heard it clatter against a hard floor. I heard her muffled footsteps running. Trevor. Her voice was a distant scream. Trevor. I heard her pound up the stairs. I heard her slam open the bedroom door. Then, silence. Just the empty sound of an open phone line. A few seconds later, I heard her pick it up. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't crying. Her voice was a terrified, empty whisper. The car is gone. Dad. The Escalade is gone. Yes, Emily, I said. He left. He left me. Oh my God. He left me. He was never with you, Emily. He was just using you. You were the cover. You were the escape plan. And now that I'm in the way, he's cashing out and leaving you to take the fall. What do I do? She whispered. Dad, please. You have to help me. I'm your daughter. You stopped being my daughter when you giggled, Emily, I said. When you watched your husband toast to my disappearance and you giggled. I hung up the phone. I sat in my car. I let the silence of the Christmas morning wash over me. The trap was set. The first piece had been moved. Now it was time to call the wolf. The sound of Emily's final broken wail was cut off, replaced by the sterile silence of my car. I felt nothing. No pity. No remorse. An operator cannot afford emotion during an active engagement. And this was very, very active. She had confirmed it. He was running. He had an early business flight. He was walking into the trap. I looked at the dashboard clock. 4:22 a.m. He'd be heading for the airport now, probably JFK or Newark, trying to catch the first flight out of the country. He had a 90-minute drive, maybe less at this hour. My window was small, but it was enough. I didn't call the police. The local cops would be too slow. They'd get lost in jurisdiction warrants and procedure. By the time they understood what was happening, Trevor would be sipping a cocktail in a country with no extradition treaty. No, this was a federal matter. This was my world. I picked up the phone and dialed Ben. He picked up on the first ring, his voice now wide awake and sharp. Matthias, what did you find? He's running, Ben, right now. He's heading to the airport. I need you to make the call. I need you to flag him. On what grounds? I can't just call in a favor with no paper. You have all the paper you need, I said, my voice cold. He has an offshore account in his wife's name in the Caymans. It's full of structured cash deposits. That's money laundering. He has a pending fraudulent loan application for $150,000, secured with a forged signature against a property he doesn't own. That's wire fraud and forgery. He's a flight risk. He's tied to Anton Krupka, and he is fleeing the country with over $200,000 in illicit funds. There was a sharp whistle on the other end. Krupka. You didn't say Krupka. Matthias, this isn't a family squabble anymore. This is big. I know what it is, Ben. That's why you're making the call. I need him stopped. I need him flagged at every international checkpoint, TSA, customs, all of it. You got it, Ben said. His voice was all business now. Money laundering, wire fraud conspiracy. That's enough to get him pulled out of any security line. He won't even make it to the gate. I'll call my contact at Homeland Security. They love this stuff more than the FBI does. Good. Tell them he's driving a black 2024 Cadillac Escalade. New plates. He's armed. Is he? Ben asked, a new tension in his voice. No, I said. But I want them to be thorough when they pull him over. Ben let out a dark chuckle. Matthias, you are a cold bastard. I love it. Consider it done. He's not getting on that plane. Thank you, Ben. One more thing, Ben said. What about your daughter? Her name is on that Cayman account. When they pick him up, they're going to start looking at her. I looked out the window at the empty highway. I know. That's her part of the consequences. I hung up. The trap was set. The federal mechanism was now grinding into motion. Trevor's escape route was closed. He just didn't know it yet. He was a rat in a maze of his own making, and he was running straight for the steel door. But setting the trap wasn't enough. I needed to watch him run. I needed him to know who had set it. I opened my call list. I found his name. Trevor. My thumb hovered over the button. It was time to make the most important call of my career. It was time for the real interrogation to begin. I sat in my cold Camry. 4:22 a.m. Christmas morning. The federal flag was in place. The digital tripwire was set. Every TSA agent, every Customs and Border Protection officer at every international departure terminal in the tri-state area now had Trevor's name flashing on their screen. The trap was built. It was time to rattle the cage. I opened my call list. I found his name. Trevor. My thumb hovered over the button. In my 40 years at the IRS, I learned that criminals have two breaking points: when you seize their money and when you shatter their ego. I was about to do both. I dialed the number. It rang once, twice. I visualized him. He was in the Escalade, the one bought with Krupka's stolen money. He'd be driving fast, 90, maybe 95, on the empty highway. The adrenaline of the escape, the arrogance of his win, the $200,000 in his mental pocket. He would be feeling invincible. He would see my name flash on the dashboard screen, and he would smile. The old fool, the complication. What could I possibly do? He picked up. The sound of a high-end luxury engine and wind filled the connection. Hey, Chief. His voice was loud, booming, and thick with that smug, false confidence. Missed dinner, you missed the toast. It was a hell of a party. You really should have come. I said nothing. I let him talk into the void. Matthias. You there? The look about the toast. I was just drunk, you know how it is. Just rattling Emily's chain. No hard feelings, right? Water under the bridge. Where are you going? Trevor. My voice was quiet. Not angry. Just cold. The way I used to speak in those small gray rooms. The fake cheer in his voice evaporated. What I told you. I've got a business trip. Early flight. You know how it is. A business trip, I repeated. Where to the Caymans? The silence that followed was the most satisfying sound I have ever heard. It wasn't just silence. It was a vacuum. It was the sound of a man's entire world stopping. It was the sound of the blood draining from his face, the sound of his knuckles turning white on the steering wheel of his stolen Escalade. I could hear his adrenaline turning from arrogance to pure cold acid terror. What? His voice was a fraction of what it was, a dry whisper. What did you just say? I said. I continued savoring each word. Are you going to the Caymans? Or is it Panama? I'd recommend Panama. The banking laws are a little more favorable for men in your line of work. I don't know what you're talking about, old man. You're losing it. He was recovering, trying to rebuild the lie. But he was sloppy. He was scared. I don't think I am, Trevor. You see, I was at your house tonight, after the party. I was in your study. Another silence. This one was shorter, sharper. I saw the forged papers, Trevor. The application for the $150,000 loan from Apex Private Capital. The one secured against my apartment. You broke into my house? He shrieked. That's illegal. You're... And I saw the signature page. I continued ignoring him. My signature. Matthias Hayes. A very good forgery. You must have practiced. When you had me sign those pension papers a few months ago. That was smart. You're not as dumb as you look. You can't prove that. That's my word against yours, you senile old. But it wasn't just the loan, Trevor. I also saw the file you labeled offshore. I saw the Cayman bank statements, the ones in Emily's name. He made a sound, a small choking sound. I saw the $210,000, Trevor. The structured cash deposits, the money you stole from your partners. My partners? You're crazy. That's investment money. Is that what you call Anton Krupka an investor? Because I call him something else. I know about the $300,000 debt, Trevor. I know he's squeezing you. I know you've been skimming from the money you were supposed to be laundering for him. I know you bought that Escalade with his cash. This time the silence was complete. He wasn't just scared anymore. He was confused. The prey had just realized the sheepdog was actually a wolf. Who? He whispered. His voice was trembling so hard I could barely understand him. Who? What the hell are you? I let the question hang in the air. I let him picture me. The quiet old man in the threadbare sweater. The boring retiree who lives in a box. You thought I was an accountant, didn't you? I said. A pencil pusher? That's what you called me, wasn't it? The chief. Just a harmless old fool you could trick, forge, and erase. What are you? He demanded, his voice cracking. For 41 years, Trevor, my job wasn't to balance books. My job was to hunt men. Men just like you. Men who thought they were smarter than the system. Men who lived in big houses they couldn't afford and drove cars they didn't pay for. Men who used their wives, their friends, their parents as shields. I am a special agent with the IRS, Criminal Investigation Division. Or at least I was. And in 40 years, Trevor, you are the most arrogant, incompetent, and sloppiest money launderer I have ever had the displeasure of analyzing. You're structuring. A joke. Using your wife's real name. A rookie mistake. Stealing from Anton Krupka. That's not just stupid. That's a suicide note. He was breathing heavily into the phone, hyperventilating. You can't prove any of it, he yelled. It was his last desperate defense. It's just paper. You stole it. It's inadmissible. You're retired. You're nothing. You're right, Trevor. I am retired, and I am nothing, which is why I don't have to follow the rules anymore. What does that mean? It means, I said, looking at my watch. 4:28 a.m. He'd be getting close to the airport. It means that while you've been talking to me, my old colleagues at Homeland Security have been waiting for you. Your name, your plates, your passport, they've all been flagged. Money laundering, wire fraud, conspiracy. You won't even make it past the security check-in, Trevor. No, you wouldn't. They're waiting for you right now. But you know that's the good news for you. That's the safe option. Because jail is a lot better than the alternative. Alternative? What alternative? Oh, I said, as if it were an afterthought. By the way, about 10 minutes ago, I made an anonymous call to one of Mr. Krupka's associates. A man I know has a short temper. I told him that a man named Trevor Grant, who owed his boss $300,000 and stole another $200,000, was at this very moment on his way to JFK to flee the country. I paused. So you have a choice, Trevor. You can keep driving forward, and my old friends at the federal government will arrest you. They'll protect you, give you a lawyer, a trial. It'll be very civilized. I leaned my head back against the seat. Or, you can turn around. You can try to go home. And you can pray that you make it back before Krupke's men find you. They, on the other hand, do not offer lawyers. He said nothing. I could hear the thump, thump, thump of the highway. I could hear his ragged, terrified breathing. He was trapped. Checkmate. Good luck, Trevor, I said. I didn't turn my car on. I just sat there in the profound, cold silence of the Christmas morning listening. I was listening for the sound of a world ending. I pictured him, Trevor, gripping the wheel of that stolen Escalade, the one he was so proud of. The phone would be dead in his hand. My words would be echoing in his head. Homeland Security is waiting. Krupke's men are looking. Airport or home? Choose. I imagined the sound his brakes must have made. A high-pitched, desperate shriek of tires on the wet pavement. He would have slammed them, the $100,000 machine lurching to a stop in the middle of an empty highway. The Escalade, his fortress of arrogance, had just become his coffin. He was trapped. Utterly, completely, and beautifully trapped. By me. I could see him, his mind racing, the sweat breaking out on his forehead, the cheap cologne mixing with the smell of pure fear. What does he do? Does he keep driving? Does he continue to the airport hoping I'm bluffing? He can't. He knows I'm not. He knows what I am now. If he goes to JFK, he's walking into a federal sting. He'll be tackled by men in windbreakers before he can even smell the Cinnabon. His life as he knows it ends. 20, maybe 30 years in a federal prison. Does he turn around? Does he try to go back to the house, back to Emily? I had already made that call. I had told Krupke's associate that Trevor was running with his money. Krupke wouldn't wait. He would have men watching the house, watching Emily, watching his investment. Going back was not an option. Going back was a death sentence. He couldn't go forward. He couldn't go back. He was paralyzed. A rat in a maze where both exits lead to a blade. He would just sit there in the middle of the highway, the engine idling, realizing for the first time in his pampered, pathetic life what real consequences feel like. And just as that absolute bottomless despair began to settle in, he would hear it. Whoop, whoop, whoop. A sound starting faint in the distance, then growing rapidly louder. Flashing lights, red and blue cutting through the pre-dawn gray painting, his terrified face in the rearview mirror. I had made one final call before I spoke to him. A simple, anonymous tip to the state police. A report of a black Escalade driving erratically, swerving all over the highway, heading east on the Belt Parkway. A possible drunk driver. They weren't federal agents. They weren't mob enforcers. They were just local cops pulling over a reckless driver on Christmas morning. Trevor Grant, the man who thought he was a kingpin, the man who was going to steal my home and destroy my daughter, was about to be arrested for a simple traffic violation. And when they ran his plates, when they saw his name, the federal flag from Homeland Security would pop. The wire fraud, the money laundering, the Krupke connection. It would all come tumbling down. I started my car. The quiet, reliable hum of the Toyota engine was the only sound. The game was over. I put the car in drive and headed home to my quiet apartment. The hunt was done. I didn't hear from her for 2 days. I didn't expect to. The federal machine moved slowly at first, then all at once. Trevor was gone, swallowed by the system. The Escalade was impounded. The house was locked, a yellow notice of seizure taped to the garish red door. I sat in my apartment. I paid my bills. I watered Clara's ivy plant. I read the newspaper. I waited. On the third day, the knock came. It wasn't the frantic pounding of the party. It was a weak, hesitant tapping. The sound of someone who has no right to ask for entry. I looked through the peephole. It was Emily. She looked terrible. I'm not a man who notices fashion, but I could see this. Her expensive clothes were wrinkled, slept in. Her hair was matted, unwashed. Her face was pale and puffy. her eyes red and raw from days of crying. She was a hollowed-out version of the daughter I remembered. I opened the door. I didn't open it wide. I just opened it enough. I stood in the doorway, blocking her entry. "Dad!" Her voice was a dry croak. I just looked at her. I said nothing. The investigator's oldest tool, silence. Let them fill the void. Let them confess. "Dad, please," she whispered, tears immediately welling up. You have to help me. Help you with what, Emily? They arrested him." She sobbed, the words tumbling out. "They arrested Trevor at the airport. And they came to the house. Federal agents, Dad. They're talking about Rico, about money laundering. They said I'm a co-conspirator." She was shaking her whole body, trembling. "They're seizing everything. The house, the bank says they're going to seize the house because it was bought with dirty money. The BMW is gone. They froze my accounts. Dad, I have nothing. I have nowhere to go. You have to help me. I'm your daughter." She reached out for me. I didn't move. I just looked at her. I let her plea hang in the stale air of the hallway. I let her see the absolute zero in my eyes. "When he made that toast, Emily," I said, my voice quiet, flat. "When he stood on the coffee table, hoping I was gone for good, you laughed." Her face crumpled. I didn't," she stammered. "I didn't mean to. I was drunk. I was scared of him. I didn't know what to do." "You giggled," I said. "You stood there while he toasted to my death, and you giggled. You made your choice, Emily. You chose him. You chose the money. You chose the Escalade. You chose the lie." "No," she wailed. "I didn't. I love you, Dad. Please, you're my father. You have to help me." "I am not your father anymore, Emily. Your father was the complication. Your father was the old man you could laugh about. I am just Matthias. And Matthias is the man whose signature your husband forged. Matthias is the man whose home you and your husband conspired to steal." "I didn't conspire. I just signed." "You signed," I finished for her. "You signed and you didn't ask questions. You lived in a house you couldn't afford, and drove a car you didn't earn, and you never once asked why. Because you were a coward. You were weak. And in this world, weakness is just another word for complicity." She looked at me, her eyes wide with the horrible understanding that the man in front of her was not going to save her. What am I supposed to do?" she whispered. I looked at her daughter, the wreck of a woman in my doorway, and I gave her my final verdict. "You are going to find out what it's like to be an adult, Emily, for the first time in your life. You are going to call the U.S. Attorney's Office. You are going to tell them you want to cooperate fully. You are going to tell them every single thing you know about Trevor, about Anton Krupke, about the Cayman account. Everything. They'll send me to prison." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe they'll see you for what you are, a foolish, greedy woman who was used by a smarter criminal. Maybe they'll give you probation. But you will have a criminal record. You will have that for the rest of your life." "But I'll have nothing." "You will sell that ridiculous BMW if they haven't seized it already. You will sell your designer bags. You will sell that gaudy ring on your finger. You will use that money to hire a public defender. And then you will get a job. You will wait tables, or you will answer phones, or you will clean houses. And you will, for the first time, pay your own rent. You will, or the first time, stand on your own 2 feet. You will, Emily, finally take responsibility for your choices." She just stared at me, the tears frozen on her face. She was realizing that there was no way out. The bank of Dad was closed. Forever. "I can't," she whispered. "I don't know how." "Then you will learn," I said. I looked at her one last time. The daughter of my heart, the last piece of Clara. She was gone. In her place was this stranger, this weak, compromised stranger. Goodbye, Emily. I closed the door. I didn't slam it. I just closed it firmly. I heard her make one small broken sound on the other side. I turned the deadbolt. A heavy final click. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and opened my newspaper. My hands were perfectly steady. The house was quiet. Order had been restored. This story teaches us a hard lesson. Greed is a bottomless pit that will eventually swallow you whole. Trevor and Emily had every opportunity to build an honest life, but they chose the path of deceit. They believed that money was the ultimate power, but they were wrong. They underestimated the quiet man in the corner. They forgot that true strength isn't about what you own or how loud you are. It's about character intelligence and the patience to wait for the perfect moment to reveal the truth. They played a short, flashy game. I played the long one. If you believe that actions must have consequences, subscribe to this channel for more stories where the truth always comes to light.